This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And good Monday evening. We are not live today. This is the Start Spreading the News show. This is Paul Semendinger along with EJ Fagan. 1 hour, probably a little less, of great Yankees talk. EJ coming to us from Arizona. I'm on the other side of the country here in New Jersey. And we're recording today because we have a lot of things to do this evening. EJ, how are you?
Doing wonderful, Paul. You know, it is 90-something degrees outside right now, but I'm in the shade. I got a fan on me. If you see, I told Paul that there might be a bobcat visiting us at some point, to be ready for that. But other than that, doing great. I have had a wonderful week in Arizona, including a trip to a new ballpark. We spend a lot of time here in Arizona. My family's out here, but usually I'm here in the spring. So we go to a lot of spring training games. I know all the spring training ballparks. They're really fun places to be. I had never been to a Diamondbacks game. And so we decided last Wednesday night to get some very cheap tickets to go to see the Arizona Diamondbacks against the Colorado Rockies. It was an interesting game. Empty stadium. Diamondbacks are good. They're in first place now that the Yankees beat the Dodgers twice. And there was probably 10,000 people in the stadium. Beautiful night. Normally this time of year it's not beautiful. It's very hot. But for us, it was an absolutely gorgeous night to watch a baseball game. Excuse me. It's a good team. It's a good team, and yet there was nobody in that stadium. The stadium itself, it's an interesting stadium. It's kind of like it's a very B- stadium, I'd say.
Just B as in boy?
No, B as in grade below an A.
Yeah, right. Boy, right.
It is a very B- experience. You know, the stadium was built in like 97-ish, something like that. And it feels like it. It feels like a stadium that, you know, it's modern in a lot of ways, but it's also doesn't have the charm of a lot of baseball stadiums that have been built more recently. It hasn't really internalized the Camden Yards that a lot of new baseball stadiums have internalized. So a lot of concrete, a lot of, you know, big open concourses, you know, nice concessions, all that kind of stuff. But really a very boring modern stadium.
Sounds a lot like Yankee Stadium.
It's a lot like Yankee Stadium. Again, a lot of big concrete blocks. Not as much as we've talked about advertising as there's at Yankee Stadium. Probably better concessions. There was some kind of nice concessions, though nothing particularly interesting. But there were some local stuff. One problem is Phoenix doesn't have a ton of local character, for being honest, and so there's not a lot to do in Phoenix. Whereas New York, you could have, I think, a much more interesting local food thing going on, bagels, and you know, you could do a Chinatown section. You could do a lot of fun stuff in New York. Can't do that in Phoenix, but it was. I can understand why it was so empty. That said, you know, for $11 you can get a pretty good seat, which is what we got. We parked for $10, and the person at the parking lot didn't even check our parking validations to just go on in, which was right next to the right field gate. It's a great experience if you're in Phoenix. I enjoyed it. It was a beautiful night. The roof was open. But you know, the thought I had at the game, you hear players saying stuff like, you know, I love playing in front of the Yankee fans. You know, the Yankee fans are different than other fans. They're more energetic. And normally that sounds like BS, right? That sounds like them just kind of saying like, yeah, you're great fans. I love playing for you. I believe it now. Like this was a really good Diamondbacks team. And there was barely anyone in the crowd, and it was a very silent crowd. There's a lot of times where the stadium camera was going to like kids dancing. And that was the entertainment for the night. And I can imagine that being kind of deflating, right? I mean, if you're a Diamondbacks player, you're a young player, you're doing great, right? You're one of the best young teams in the league. You're gonna probably in the be in the playoffs, and this might be what you can expect. I don't want to insult Diamondbacks fans. There's a lot of people in this area that go to spring training games. I've been to some packed spring training games here. But in a May game on a Wednesday night against a not very good Rockies team with a very good Diamondbacks team, it was empty. Interesting dynamic, but also a hell of a lot cheaper than New York. I'll tell you that. We had front row of the upper deck for $11 each. It was pretty good.
Yeah. Now, you know what you're also saying is it's interesting. Let's say you're Aaron Judge And last year they're having the whole, is he
Mhm.
coming back and all of that. And I really think that for a moment, I've been thinking about this a lot. We'll never know the truth. Maybe someday somebody will come out or judge will, whatever. Like when Bernie Williams almost went to the Red Sox, he basically said, yeah, I was basically in agreement. I was going to go to the Red Sox. And
Mm.
then at the last moment, George Steinbrenner called him and said, no, you can't go. We're not letting you go. And he came back. I happen to think that I'll bet you Aaron Judge was just about that close. John Heyman, I can't imagine he would blow that story so much, right? Like Aaron Judge is now a Giant. There had to be somebody there that said, "Yeah, we're pretty like it's
Well, he had a bigger offer from the Giants, right? They
yeah,
offered him more
yeah."
money.
So so so
Uh,
so imagine instead of it being the Giants, right? So I bet you he was that close, if not like almost a handshake or whatever before Hal Steinbrenner calls him up. I mean, it would almost happen. But imagine if you're Aaron Judge and it wasn't the Giants. If he, let's say he wasn't from California or whatever, and he was from Arizona, and it wasn't the Giants that were offering you that
mm.
same contract as the Yankees, but it was the Diamondbacks. I mean, for the same money or even for more money, I don't think I would go there if it's like you're describing. Why would I, as a superstar, want to go play for a team that's in first place and there's no crowd support? I mean, that has to be
Yeah.
deflating, no?
Of course. I mean, look, at some point, the extra couple $1 million is not going to change Aaron Judge's life, but he's going to play baseball for the next 10 years of his life before he moves on and does something else. And it's got to be fun, right? I mean, I would certainly prioritize that kind of stuff over just pure money. Even think about a player like Jose Ramirez, re-signed with Cleveland. Jose Ramirez gave up a lot of money by signing a very team-friendly deal, probably 50, $60 million. And I think, he's probably happier because he did it. He loves it there. He loves the fans there. He's the hero there. He's going to play his whole career there. And I don't blame players at all for that. It's got to be hard to be a small market team, especially a small market team that's trying to build like the Diamondbacks. They can't, they have to overpay to bring in a free agent. So they may not be able to convince Aaron Judge. They might be able to convince whatever, Michael Conforto. But they're going to have to give him money to do that. And that makes it doubly hard to build a team. You have less money than the Yankees, and you have to, pay extra
Overpay.
to bring players in. Um, the other thing is that I think about salary cap leagues. You have teams in salary cap leagues that they might be in undesirable places, and they don't have the money, right? They have the same money as everybody else. The NBA has this problem of teams, of players creating super teams, where like 3 or 4 superstars will get together and be like, let's all go play in this city. And they all go play there, and they're great, right? Because there doesn't take that many great players to make a great basketball team, but also because the salary cap doesn't allow other teams to compete by paying those players more. The NHL has this problem. The New Jersey Devils for years had trouble convincing players to either stay in New Jersey or to come to New Jersey. Their star player when I was in college was a guy named Zach Parise. Parise was, the first round draft pick by them, came right up, was a really great young player, went to the Stanley Cup Finals with them, and then signed a contract to go play at home in Minnesota. And I don't blame him because he was being offered the same money by the Devils, and the Minnesota crowds are incredible. It's a great play. Those are hockey fans. Those are big time hockey fans. Whereas frankly, the New Jersey crowds are sometimes pretty empty. Um, yeah, so I think it's a big advantage that the Yankees have. I am frankly surprised they don't use it a little more often. Like they don't have a lot of 38-year-old veterans spending their last year or two with the team, which I think the Yankees could probably find some way to take advantage of. You still got to pay them, but you don't have to pay them for long-term contracts. And maybe, to pick a name, Yadier Molina would have liked to spend one season trying to get a championship in New York. Um, yeah, so it's a good point, and I think it's a big reason why Aaron Judge is still leading the league in home runs for the New York Yankees.
As a Yankee, correct. You make an interesting point. One of the things that people don't remember, and I only know this because my dad was a big baseball fan in the 40s and 50s and everything. But when the Yankees were the great team, but let's just talk about that era, 1940s, late 1940s, early 1950s. Every year they seemed to do what you're advocating is they would find the old veteran on a different team and bring that guy in, and that guy would then all of a sudden make a big impact on the pennant drive at the end of the season. Guys like Enos Slaughter, Ewell Blackwell, Johnny Mize, Johnny Sane, Jim Constanti. These guys were all big-time all-star players, so usually at the end of their career, their last couple of years. But the Yankees would find a way to get these guys, bring them in, and the next thing you know, they go 7-0 down the stretch, or they hit 335 and hit a couple of bombs. And the Yankees really used that to their advantage because they had that ability, and they would bring these guys in and they'd help them win. But let's go back to Judge. Let's talk about the good first. The Yankees are winning. They're doing great. And I even wrote an article on Start Spreading the News, which ran yesterday. I've been a naysayer. And, maybe one of the reasons I've been a naysayer is because, I don't want to get my heart broken. I just haven't felt like this is the great Yankee team. But they've been so great for so long now. Like they're starting to make me believe in them. And I was giving all these stats in the article, but the point is the Yankees have like the third or fourth most amount of wins in Major League Baseball. They're doing great. So
and the best since May 1st. A really tough schedule they've played since May 1st. They've had basically no off days, and they've been injured as hell. Right?
Yes,
I mean, this is not
winning.
a full squad at all. Yeah.
And I think the thing that made me excited. Okay, go on.
Well, I mean, I think this is a team that feels like a contender, right? In fact, feels healthier than, except for the beginning of the year last year. Last year's team did. And that team won 100 games. This team's not on track to win 100 games yet because they had a not great stretch in the end of April and the beginning of May. But it's a good team. I mean, it's fun to watch. I really love the Dodgers series. That was fun. Luckily, I'm on the West Coast, so I got to watch it. It was a lot of fun games against a really good team. That was fun to watch.
It was fun, and all of a sudden, I watch these Yankee games with a sense of foreboding. And then when Aaron Judge made that catch in right field and he crashed the wall like it was a movie, the door opens, he falls in, he makes the catch, he came out of nowhere.
It's like the old Minnesota highlight. Who was the guy who ran through the wall in Minnesota?
Right.
One of the great baseball highlights ever. Right?
And in the movie The Natural, that happened. And the guy actually, I think in the movie, died, right? And then that's how Roy Hobbs got in the lineup, I think. I don't quite remember. But, it was awesome. And I found myself going, I just love this team. I love Aaron Judge. It's just great. So first off, how do the Dodgers still have a wall that breaks, that's held together by a latch or something? How is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's an old stadium. We talk about charms. Old stadiums have a charm to them. I think the Dodger Stadium is kind of old, doesn't really have a charm to them, frankly. I've never been there. I'm reminded of was it the Rays, I think, years ago had a weird quirk of the stadium. They got somebody injured on the Yankees, something like that. I don't know, reinforce the wall now or something like that. I guess it's a problem. There's a big piece of concrete that Aaron Judge with his toe on may have broken it. Sounds like he broke it from his comments after the game. Hopefully a broken toe isn't who knows. I have no idea how long a broken toe puts Aaron Judge out for.
I'm hearing up to 2 months.
It could be, yeah. I mean, it depends on where it's broken, how badly it's broken, which toe it is. But the comments didn't sound good after the game. And I'm with you. I think that modern baseball stadiums are built so that there's a lot of places that outfielders can run into without getting hurt. And there was a big piece of concrete in right field that may have gotten a Yankee injured, and the worst Yankee to get injured. And the Yankees need Aaron Judge. He's the best player in baseball. He's currently on pace for another 60 home run season if it wasn't for the 10 days that he already missed. And now if he has to miss another, not forget months, 2 months, 1 month, 3 weeks, not only is that going to, mean he's not going to hit 60 home runs, but the Yankees are going to have trouble winning games without the best hitter in baseball in the lineup.
And I'm going to give you some stats here. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
The Yankees have won 36 games this year. In 30 of them, Aaron Judge has played in 30 of the Yankees' wins. His batting average in those wins is .387, and he's hit 18 home runs. In the 19 games the Yankees have lost with Aaron Judge in the lineup, he's hitting 145 with 1 home run. Let me just do a couple more years. 2022, last year the Yankees won 99 games. In 96 of those wins, Aaron Judge played and batted 340 with 49 home runs. In 61 losses, he batted not as bad, 259 with 13 home runs. In 2021, in 86 of the Yankee 92 wins, he batted 332 with 30 homers. In the 62 losses that he played in, he hit 227 with 9 homers. And then in 2020, in 16 of the 33 games the Yankees won, Judge batted 333 with 8 homers. And in the 12 losses he played in, he batted only 146 with 1 home run. The point being, and tell me if I'm reading this wrong, when Judge is in the lineup and he's hitting, the Yankees win. And if he's not in the lineup or he's not hitting, the Yankees lose.
I mean, this is a lineup that's been built around Aaron Judge, and only Aaron Judge. It's not a balanced lineup. It's not a lineup with 3 or 4 superstars. I think they're in a little bit better shape now than they were back when he got injured last month, because Torres is hitting really well. Rizzo is still hitting well. You have Stanton and Donaldson back. Like there are other players in this lineup, and they're not going to be playing some of the real bad lineups they're playing at the end of April. That said, there's no replacing Aaron Judge. The Yankees are going to lose a lot of games because if they don't have Aaron Judge in the lineup, I hope that they find out that it's either not broken or there's like a mild hairline fracture that's not that big of a deal. You can't lose. Losing the best player in baseball, there's no replacement for that. Hopefully Harrison Bader will be back soon. Greg Allen, I don't know what's going on with Greg Allen, but he's injured again. The Yankees keep losing outfielders. I hate to say it, like I wish this was an infielder. Like break an infielder's toe, not Aaron Judge's toe. So we'll wait and see, and hopefully he's not that badly injured. I haven't seen any news updates on him yet.
I just checked before we were recording this in about the middle of the day. It's about 3:20 in New York. I checked before we went on the air. So, I've been critical. I think everybody has of the Yankee roster management, but I think you hit the nail on the head. If you lose the best player in baseball, you're going to lose a lot more games, and you can't. I can argue that you shouldn't build a team around Harrison Bader. We'll talk about that in a moment because the guy's always hurt, but you're going to build a team around Aaron Judge because he is the best player in baseball. And if he goes down, there's nothing you can really do to replace him.
And it's a freak injury, right? It's not it's not like a shoulder's been bothering him for 5 years. It's not Carlos Correa has got an MRI on his knee or something that people don't trust. I mean, I think Aaron Judge hit a wall, right? And although he broke the wall when he hit the wall, but broke a little pice of himself too.
Yeah, right. And so there's no criticism of the injury, and Aaron Judge has probably the better word, a somewhat concerning injury history. Missed a lot of time. Most recently, I guess in 2020, he was saved a little bit by the shortened season because I think he would have been out the whole first half of the year. But since then, he's been healthy. And if this is an injury, this you can't hold against him. This is not his fault. The wall broke, and that sometimes freak injuries happen. But I think if he's not there, the Yankees are up the creek.
I agree. And I think it's worth looking at his numbers and just seeing how good he has been. He has arguably been better on a per-game basis this season than last season. And I called his last season the best hitting season of all time. Just absolutely incredible. An otherworldly player right now. I think if there's a silver lining to this is that, he'll hopefully be back with plenty of time to go before the playoffs. Even if it's 2 months, right? That seems to me like a worst case scenario, 2 months. Well, that means he'll be back in August, and the Yankees will still contend for a wild card, but they have to keep their head above water until then. And that's tough. They don't have a good replacement for him. There's really no outfielders in the minors other than like Esteban Florial, who we talked about to death. That you could call up, and the Yankees don't have an infielder maybe that they could shift to the outfield real easily. So I think you're seeing a lot of IKF if he's out. I think you're seeing a lot of Jake Bowers, who you were already going to see, maybe some Stanton in right field, a little bit more of that. Those are all downgrades defensively and offensively, and there's just nothing you can do about it. I mean, they're going to take a hit. And hopefully they have an easier schedule with a lot of off days in June. If you're going to miss Aaron Judge for a month, June's the month to miss it for the Yankees right now. And hopefully they can kind of squeeze through a lot of wins. They won a lot of games back when everybody was injured a month ago. And now we're kind of back in that same world. And I think they're in a much stronger position than they were a month ago.
I'll say but if Judge isn't the guy, I think they're up the creek, and I don't even know if they're a wild card team. Let's pretend this is coming out of left field. I just thought of this. There's only one real player who could replace Judge, and it's Shohei Ohtani, right? And that's sort of the dream. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Let's say the Angels, let's say Judge is hurt, and they're saying, yeah, it's 2 months, might be 2.5 months. It's
would I trade for Shohei Ohtani?
So if you're the Angels, let's say like the Angels then go and they lose the next 21 games. I think they went through a stretch like that last year where I think they're about 500 right now. They obviously can contend for a wild card. Let's say they lose the next 21 games in a row. It's over. Shohei Ohtani goes to management. He says, I'm not coming back. And so they know this is the only time to get anything for him. They have to trade him. If you're the Angels, knowing how desperate the Yankees are, I
think they'd want a Volpe or Peraza or Dominguez or multiple of those guys for him. Mm-hmm. I actually think if you look at the history of rentals recently in baseball, they wouldn't get that. Rentals are not that big of assets at the trade deadline. Even Shohei Ohtani, right now the clear best healthy player in baseball. If I'm Brian Cashman and I have a chance to trade for Ohtani, like, I don't know, I might do it just because it's Ohtani, right? Like, just because I want him on my team. That said, the Yankees don't really have a good setup for Ohtani because they have a DH in Giancarlo Stanton. And Ohtani, I mean, I guess he could play the outfield, but I wouldn't push it. I mean, that's asking a lot of a player to play the outfield a lot after pitching. So I don't think he fits this team. But I don't know, maybe I kind of want to see Shohei Ohtani. I would trade some bad seasons to watch a half season of Shohei Ohtani in pinstripes, frankly. But I think that's what you're doing, right? If you're trading Peraza, for instance, for Ohtani, you're missing out on a lot of good seasons for half a season for a team that, even if you do everything right, it's probably a wild card team. That's a lot.
What if they give you the negotiating window thing so the Yankees can sign him? You give them that? How much are you willing to give up? That's what I'm trying to get. Would you give up Dominguez?
I think that the negotiating window isn't worth a lot. He's going to be a free agent. Even if he's not a free agent, he's going to command a giant contract.
Well, let's say the
Yankees,
again.
I don't think I want him on the team long term.
Oh,
because you're stuck with Stanton, right? You're stuck with Stanton is the problem, right? And so if you could get rid of Stanton, sure, right? But you're not going to get rid of Stanton, and you can't have two DHs. So I just don't think he fits the Yankees, unfortunately. And I think it sounds like he's going to be a West Coaster anyway. And a lot of teams are going to want him. Some teams are going to pay a lot of money for Shohei Ohtani, and I just hope that wherever he goes, that he's in the playoffs.
Yes, he just and Mike Trout too. I mean, you want to see the best players in the game there. So I'm going to give you had a preview of this. I want Bill James or the Sabre guys or Jay Jaffe or any of these brilliant baseball mathematicians to give us a new stat. And we know about WAR, and WAR is good. I mean, it gives you a sense. It's a common thing you can talk about. He's a 3 WAR player. We've all got to the point where we know what that is. He's a 60 WAR player over his career. Oh, that should be a Hall of Famer. He's an 80 WAR player. He's an absolute Hall of Famer. He's a 40 win player. Probably not a Hall of Fame, right? We know what those numbers mean. We're comfortable with them. They mean the same thing, I think, to baseball fans today as a 300 batting average or 500 home runs a long time ago or whatever. Like, it makes sense. But I want to ask you, is there a way to come up with a statistic, something called like deducted WAR? And I'm thinking of that specifically for a guy like Harrison Bader, who can be like a 3 WAR player, but when he's not playing and the Yankees don't have a replacement, it's IKF or it's Greg Allen or some sub replacement level player for the most part. So Bader might be worth 3 wins, but when he's not in the lineup, the Yankees maybe are worth -2 wins. So he's not really a 3-win player over the course of a season. He's really a 1-win player because his 3 is you take the 2 negative deducted from his 3 that when he was in the lineup. How does that work, and can that be a statistic?
It's tough because the purpose of a stat like WAR is to isolate the individual contributions of a player. So WAR says how good is this player versus the typical replacement player that you would call up if he did get injured. And what you're saying is that the Yankees are playing a lot of sub-replacement level players, which is not a very high bar to meet, I should note, right? To replace their injured outfielders, and so the Yankees are suffering a lot by not having Bader in the lineup, and so therefore Bader's injury really hurts them. That's the Yankees' problem, not Bader's problem. WAR is essentially replacement level is essentially the average level of a guy who got called up to fill in for a player. And the Yankees should have a replacement level or better player to fill that spot, and they don't. Not Bader's problem, right? You could have a player who does better than a replacement level player in their call up. So, for example, right now in left field, I don't know who is the incumbent left fielder. There really wasn't one, but Jake Bauers is currently playing well above replacement level.
Yeah,
and
Matt,
so you
Matt
wouldn't
Holliday
give
last year, whatever, right?
you
Not
wouldn't
Matt
give
Holliday, Carpenter.
You wouldn't give I don't know, Aaron Hicks credit for Jake Bauers' performance. Right.
That'd be the great. I'm liking my stat idea. Aaron Hicks was a -4 WAR player, but he kept getting hurt, which the Yankees appreciated because Matt Carpenter was an 8 WAR player. So Aaron Hicks should get credit for that. I think my stat makes all the sense in the world.
I mean, the problem here is that you're thinking about teams versus individuals, right? You want to look at the Yankees team performance in center field. We'll go to the depth charts and Fangraphs, and you'll see that they are well below Harrison Bader's number because Harrison Bader was really valuable, but when he wasn't in the field, they got really bad performance out of people. But again, it's not Harrison Bader's fault. The typical team can replace Harrison Bader with a better player than the Yankees did, and they just need to do it, right? Like the Yankees need to get better at not playing every year like a ton of players well below replacement level for 300 at bats, which is what they did with Marwin Gonzalez, is what they've done with a ton of players. Rougned
Odor. Yeah.
We can go down the list of players, and that cost them a lot of wins every year and a lot of frustration. It's not a problem if they have a better team going into the playoffs. But we've seen that the Yankees actually end up going into the playoffs with a lot of replacement players, with Andrew Velazquez playing short. That's not good. And some of it's on the players. I actually think that they've kind of figured it out with Calhoun and Bauers at this point, that they have, I think, some pretty decent replacement players right now on the roster. But, Oswaldo Cabrera was a black hole for this season, went down for a day and a half, or for 12 hours, and came back up. And, those types of players failing, it's a problem with the team, but not a problem with the players, right? You don't fault Aaron Judge because now that he's out of the lineup, you're going to have, I don't know, Giancarlo Stanton playing right field and Calhoun DHing, right? Like that's a huge step down from Judge, but it's not his fault.
I'm still, yeah, you're 100% right. Where do you find that? Then I have to just, I'm going to go back to what's making me laugh with Aaron Hicks, but where do you find that? It's on Fangraphs. What's it called?
Fangraphs has their depth charts. That's what I use. And they'll show you all the position breakdown by team.
By team. Okay. Position breakdown by team. That's good. It should be kind of funny. Like, you give Aaron Hicks the MVP award because he purposely gets injured because the Yankees have a better player that they refuse to play except if he's injured. So the 12-win player plays, the other guy who is a negative player, he gets credit for that. So the player who had the 12 WAR doesn't get the MVP. It's the guy who had the position. Anyway, it doesn't make any sense. It's just silly. So on the Bronx Beat podcast yesterday, you had a distinguished panel. I think Tim Cable and Pat Gunn were with you. And you guys talked about the Volpe Peraza thing. Now, Volpe homered last night, but you recorded obviously before then. And Volpe has not hit very well this year. He struggled a lot, and Peraza's hitting about 9 million, and he has about 400,000 home runs in his first month back in the minor league. So basically, what was the consensus that you guys came up with as what you should do with those two guys? What's your point? And then I'm going to give you my perspective. I'd like you to respond to.
Well, we disagreed. So I think both Pat and Tim thought that, you owed it to Volpe's development to give him a lot more time. I think they both did the All-Star break at least, and then kind of decide whether or not you want to send him down. Um, I disagreed. I think Oswald Peraza right now is hitting the crap out of the ball down in the minors. He has 10 home runs in 25 games. This is before yesterday. He had batting, I think, 330 with a 390 on base. He's not striking out. He's got a 14% strikeout rate. Like, he is the best version of himself. And he's a guy with a lot of talent. On top of all this, he's a better defender than Volpe. Everybody agrees on that. He's a great defender. And they don't have him playing any position other than the shortstop.
I was going to bring that up.
So they're not readying him for a utility role, nor should they, in my opinion. I think he's a better shortstop than Volpe. And this is the discussion that we had in spring training. The problem we have is that in spring training, we assume, Gleyber Torres isn't that good. And so you can trade him, and then Volpe can play second, Peraza can play short. It's a good thing they didn't do that. They didn't listen to me, because Torres has been a really important player on this team. Their leadoff hitter, been a good second baseman. I mean, just really strong performance. And so second base is locked down. You have some options. You can move Volpe. You can move Peraza. But if Volpe were hitting, I think this would be a more difficult dilemma, right? If you had two really good players, that's a tough problem to have. I think right now Volpe is not hitting. This was, again, before yesterday's game. He had a 2-hit game. One of his first real, the homer was fine, but the line drive single, it's the first time I'd seen Volpe do that in a long time. I think it's okay to send Volpe down. And I don't think you can manage a major league team in a competitive wild card race thinking about what Volpe might be years from now. I think you got to play the best team you can put on the field, especially with Aaron Judge out, right? You really have to try to find your best team. I think the best team right now probably has Oswald Peraza at short. That said, if you call him up, we all agreed on this, you got to give him time. So you can't just see if he struggles and then after 2 weeks send him down. You have to assume that there's going to be an adjustment period or just a bad luck period. And so you'd be talking about sending Volpe down for a month or two. I'm okay with that. Volpe's not hitting, and he's I believe leads the majors in strikeouts. He's hitting home runs, which is nice, and he's been clutch at times. His defense has not been anything to write home about. It's been fine, but not great. He's not stealing a lot of bases because he's not getting on base.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that really was useful to Volpe early in the season, the reason why he was so good in April, is because he was walking a lot. Well, major league pitchers figured out they just got to throw him strikes. He stopped walking. And so now he's not on base to steal a lot of bases where a lot of his value came from. And so if you're not stealing bases, if you're not getting on base, you're hitting a decent number of home runs. I think he's second on the team in home runs. I mean, he's hitting a lot of home runs. I think these are all signs that Volpe's a good player, but I don't think he's the best shortstop the Yankees have right now. And I think Peraza is a really talented player. And, if I was the odds maker right now, who's going to be the better major league shortstop? I think it might be Peraza, and that's just because Volpe is struggling. That said, prospects struggle, right? Adley Rutschman this time last year was hitting like 190 for the Orioles. Aaron Judge struggled on his first call-up, and he's 3 years older than Volpe, I believe. There's lots of reasons to believe that Volpe is not a bust at this point. But I don't think there should be any shame in sending him down to AAA and letting him try to overcome his weaknesses. That's what they did to Oswaldo Cabrera, and although they were forced to call him back up, I think that's fine. I think the problem you have is what happens if he does address those weaknesses. What do you do if they're both good? And that's then they're back in that spring training problem, and that's a good problem to have. I still think my idea, especially if Aaron Judge is going to be out for a while, of converting him to the outfield is a good idea. I don't think they're going to do that. Third base is an interesting place because the Yankees are going to need a third baseman, maybe this year, but definitely next year. And Cabrera may not be that person. I think there's a good chance that we thought at the beginning of the season Cabrera might be that guy. And so I think there are options for the Yankees, but I don't think there's really I don't think anyone really questions right now who's better in the majors at shortstop today. It's Peraza.
It's an interesting dilemma, and my concern, which you basically addressed, was this idea that the Yankees seem to have this fascination with playing people out of position. IKF's all of a sudden an outfielder. They're talking about moving Judge to left field. They put Oswald Cabrera, who never played in the outfield, They
put Peraza, a Gold Glove shortstop, at third base.
A Gold Glove third baseman at shortstop. And excuse me. IKF, a Gold Glove third baseman.
Oh no,
actually.
I mean they put Peraza when they called him up earlier this
Oh,
season.
right,
They
he played one
they played him
game.
at third base,
Right.
and
Right,
before he
right.
got injured, right? Like that to me makes very little sense.
Correct. And so then he goes to the minor leagues because supposedly Volpe's going to be the shortstop for the next 20 years, and he plays only shortstop. Like, that would have been the time to say to Peraza, figure out second base or figure out third base. We put all our eggs in the Volpe basket. So if Volpe
So
gets sent down,
why do you think they haven't? Because I have a theory. But why do you think
all
they're
right,
not?
I'm thinking you're thinking what I'm thinking, and that would be that obviously they're going to trade one or the other.
I mean,
You
I think
can't
that
have two shortstops.
I think he is very valuable as a trade piece right now, Peraza. I think Volpe isn't. I mean, you could get something for Volpe, but I don't think they're trading Volpe. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Peraza is being showcased right now for a trade, and frankly, he's hitting so well that I think a lot of teams will be interested in him. I think he is probably, when you get the midseason prospect rankings, going to shoot up those rankings. He's hitting for a lot of power. And it's not like the International League, the AAA, is a bandbox league, not the Pacific Coast League. Like, he is one of the best hitters in the minors at the moment, and a Gold Glove shortstop. Right, that is valuable. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's traded. But that said, I don't think the Yankees can afford to trade him right now. There aren't a bunch of like free agent shortstops hitting the market anytime soon. The shortstop of the Yankee future is either Anthony Volpe or Oswald Peraza, and Volpe right now is not hitting. I don't know if you want to bet on that. I think the Yankees might need Peraza to be a really good shortstop.
So if I'm the Yankees and I send Volpe down, and listen, I'm the guy who said you give him 1,000 at bats. If once they gave him the job, let him play shortstop all year long. If you're hitting 211 on July 19th, you're still batting ninth. If you're hitting 422, you're still batting ninth. I didn't like the fact that they moved him all over the lineup. We've discussed that. We've disagreed on that, which is fine because to your point makes a whole lot of sense. You're a major leaguer. You go in the lineup where you go. But if I'm the Yankees and I send him down, and there was, and I've written about this, that one day in 1995 when the Yankees sent down two players on the same exact day, Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera, they both got sent down and they both came back and had Hall of Fame careers. So
and Mariano's stats on that year were awful, right? It's one of those fun things. If you remove his first year in the majors from his stat line, his ERA goes down like a lot because he was starting and he had like a 5.6 ERA or something like that. Yeah.
And so, it's not the end of your career if you get sent down. Plenty of guys got sent down. I think you mentioned Judge as well. It just feels like they blew it if they send him down because, like, we're anointing him our new shortstop forever, and it didn't work. But if they do send him down, the Yankees have to try him out at another position, right? You can't. Because if Peraza is what he's supposed to be, he is a major league shortstop and he's the better of the two. So you got to give him the position then and say, you're the shortstop. Volpe, figure out second base because I don't think he has the arm for third base or the outfield, I guess. But he can't play shortstop, right?
There are a decent number of players with kind of weak arms who play third. Third, it's interesting. There's some plays at third that require a strong arm, like going beyond the foul line to get a ball. But there's a lot of third basemen like DJ LeMahieu who have kind of weak arms. Because a lot of the times they're catching a ball in front of the base and they have a shorter throw than a shortstop and basically a little bit longer than a second baseman. So I wouldn't be shocked if Volpe can handle third. I think if you read a lot of the preseason scouting reports, they said he's a long-term second baseman.
Right.
Maybe a shortstop for a couple of years. Look, he's not a bad shortstop. He's an average shortstop. Maybe slightly below average that will get a little better with a little bit of experience, right? He's been having trouble making relatively routine plays, but I think he's been fine once he has the ball. And some of those were like turf field stuff. And I think he has been a major league shortstop, just not the best major league shortstop in the organization. Better than IKF by far. And so you move that guy to second base. Maybe he's a Gold Glover. Now you don't have a spot for him. And problem is we're letting kind of we're being forced to have the current Yankee needs dictate where to play a prospect. This is the problem of being a contending team, right? If the Yankees were out of it, they would trade Gleyber Torres and Volpe would be the second baseman. This would not be a difficult thing to do, but they can't do that because they would lose games.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to do that, understandably. So what do you do with him? I think Volpe long-term, let's think about just this season. Long-term, second base is still an option. You can still trade Torres after the season. Torres is good, but he's not indispensable right now. late this season. So let's say you go down to AAA, he hits really well. It's August 1st. Peraza and Volpe are both hitting well. Peraza's the major league shortstop. Volpe is doing really well. Maybe playing some second base, playing some third base, but mostly playing shortstop at AAA. If that's the scenario we're under, Volpe's a good bench player going into the playoffs, right? I mean, I wish Jeter had been on the bench in 1995. Volpe can steal bases.
He was on the team, though. He was up. That was one of the smart things they did. He sat with the team and experienced it, which was neat. But go on.
And Volpe is going to have invaluable major league experience if they decide to send him down. There's also a world, I hate to say this, where Volpe just fails, right? Like, he is a prospect, and prospects are a gamble. I thought he was a really good prospect, but there's a lot of really good prospects that either never become good major league players or take time. I think Volpe's a major league player, right? We have seen that he can hit for power. He can play good enough shortstop. He's a good base runner, really good base runner, right? That is major league caliber. He's more than replacement level despite hitting below 200. That's saying something. But the question is what is he going to hit? Is he going to be a 200 hitter? If he's a 200 hitter, that's not good, right? That's not good for the Yankees. It also would not be that crazy for a really good prospect to be a 200 hitter who ends up being a major league journeyman or ends up taking years to succeed. So Jared Kelenic is having a really good breakout season for the Mariners. I believe this is his third season in the majors.
How about Jorge Mateo, right? He was going to be the guy who came up with Glaber, and it's taken him a long time before he's acclimated.
And now he's being called, Cal Ripken's calling him the best shortstop in Baltimore history, right? Best defensive shortstop, right? Like,
and that's a high bar not because of Ripken, but before Ripken, they had a shortstop for more than a decade named Mark Belanger, who was a tremendous, he couldn't hit, but he was a tremendous defensive shortstop.
Yeah, I think we forget how young Volpe is. I always want to imagine a prospect, if they had gone to college, where would they be right now? And if Volpe had gone to college, he would have been a first-round pick, or probably a high first-round pick last season, and he would be in high A. That's where Judge was at the same age. And he is in the major leagues, which means that there is a lot of development time to come. The problem is the Yankees need to win games now. And to win games now, I think we're getting to the end of the Anthony Volpe experiment. I don't think we can give until the All-Star break. The Yankees need to win games in June, potentially without Aaron Judge. And so I think maybe, look, he just hit a home run. He's had a line drive. He's got some bad pitching he's coming up against. He's got the White Sox. He's got the Red Sox, two of the worst pitching teams in the American League. The Red Sox are somehow like at 500 because they're hitting like crazy, but they are a bad pitching team. Let's give him some time against bad pitching. And if at the end of this week he has 2 hits in 6 games or whatever, right? If his numbers are not significantly better, if he's not above 200, I think at that point you send him down. I think either way you think about calling up Peraza. Peraza is hitting so well. He has a long minor league pedigree. So Volpe's a guy who you could argue is like, look, didn't get enough time in the minors. Barely hit a AAA, had a half season at AA. Peraza had more than half a season at AAA. And now in his second season at AAA, he's the best hitter at AAA. Right? Like that is a very normal progression. And it means that you're not gaining anything by keeping him in the minors. Even if he's not playing every day, I think it's smart to bring him up. But there's also just, again, a lot of Yankee infielders. Donaldson's back, hit 2 home runs. Don't have a lot of faith in Donaldson, but he hit 2 home runs, right? Like that's something. LeMahieu is still playing, even though I think he might be a little bit injured. And I wouldn't be shocked to see what happens. The DH spot is now open, but you have Willie Calhoun, who's been hitting really well in the last month. You have Jake Bowers, who's been hitting really well in the last month. Like, this is a crowded roster. And I don't know what Peraza's role is if you call him up, if you don't send Volpe down, but he certainly deserves it. I'd love to see him play second and maybe have Glaber DH a little bit. If you imagine you have right field with Giancarlo Stanton against lefties, well, you're not going to have Willie Calhoun in against lefties. So Glaber can go to DH, and you could play either LeMahieu or Volpe or Peraza at second base. What I don't think they should do is I don't think they should and we mentioned this in terms of lineup position, this is a bigger deal. Treat Volpe like a fragile, breakable product, right? Volpe is a major league player. He's a major league player with good makeup, right? With every indication that Anthony Volpe is someone who will handle adversity well. I don't think you can give him 1,000 plate appearances without being good, just because he's a prospect that you built a lot of myth and legend around already. That was all PR. That's not baseball. And I think if you're Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone, like, you got to play baseball, not PR. Let the PR department sell Volpe as, the New Jersey kid whose dad used to call into WFAN. You're like, that's great. That's fun. I love that stuff. But I don't think it should impact your decisions about a player. I don't think you're irreparably harming him by sending him down. But give him a week, right? Give him, don't tell him you're going to give him a week. That's pressure. But, the Yankees have seen some really tough pitching, and it's been a abysmal month for Volpe. He hit, I think, 160 last month. But now maybe he can make an adjustment back. They've got some off days, so he can get some rest. I mean, one thing to note, Volpe's played almost every game for the Yankees because the Yankees have played a ton of games. They have, I think, 7 or 8 off days in June. I mean, they have a ton of off days. So give him that time to rest. Give him some time to face the White Sox and the Red Sox. And, sometime soon, if he's not better, I just don't see how you can wait around for things to change.
And the other side of that equation is when a guy gets sent down, who probably heading into spring training thought he was going to get the job, and that's Peraza, because he had been up last year and he did well enough. He even started a playoff game. When a guy gets sent down and then performs at such a high level, has such a great attitude that he just goes, hey, I got to be great. And he is. I think there also has to be some type of part of the system that says, this guy did everything we asked him to do, and he's doing everything we asked him to do. He deserves to come back. And
props to Peraza, right? I mean,
yeah.
he's really handling it well. I think about how Clint Frazier handled being sent down.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. Clint Frazier was a guy who we'll say had a little bit less good makeup, and he was in the majors, and he had like a shoe line going. Like he seemed to internalize that he was in the majors to stay, and they sent him down after his defense was very, very bad, and he never really recovered from that. That's not Peraza. Peraza was started a playoff game for the Yankees, and he's been at AAA this year, and at no fault of his own, right? He has looked like a major league player this entire time. So yeah, good for him, and I think he deserves that. I hate to play psychologist, but I hate to show prospects that they can be really, really good and not get rewarded for it.
Mm-hmm. That's we're saying the exact same thing.
The Yankees have a lot of guys who are actually doing really well in AA and AAA. We should talk about them on these episodes. But Austin Wells is having a season. Jason Dominguez is having an interesting season, but that I think is going to turn very, very good soon. Estevan Florial is having a season. Ben Rortvedt was having a season. He got his call up only because of an injury. There's a lot of these. Everson Pereira is having a great season. These guys deserve to be major league players. And I understand the union's complaints when they go, we just want guys who are good enough to play in the majors to get the paycheck and play in the majors. And I mean, Florial to me is the obvious example of a guy who clearly is good enough to play in the majors. And the Yankees just, for whatever reason, don't think he's good enough to play in New York, despite Frankie Cordero having a lineup spot, right? I mean, it's very strange to me. And I hope that they give Peraza a chance either by trading him or by playing him.
Well, EJ, the National Podcast Health Association was contacting me, and they did say that you're sitting outside in 90-degree weather, and they highly encouraged me to say, let's not keep EJ in that heat for more than 45 to 50 minutes. And we're approaching the 50-minute barrier.
Let's look at the thermometer. Can you see the thermometer behind me? Hold on. Let's go here. We got, I don't know if you can see that from there. It is 92 right now on the thermometer. So yeah,
and that's why you are so great. Yeah. Dedication and not a bead of sweat. I have to say, like,
it's actually not bad. It's not bad in the shade here, but still a little bit hot.
But we're going to wrap it up, EJ. Have yourself a good flight. Have yourself a good couple of days. Welcome back to Chicago. And then I think you're heading to Cleveland and all sorts of fun things up on the horizon. So we'll talk all about that in future episodes. This has been the Start Spreading the News Show, the greatest podcast on the internet. Well, I guess tied with the Bronx Beat podcast and the Dr. Sem Show, but one of the top three, definitely. Have yourselves